Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
Let's get right into it then.
Yeah, so imagine standing in the blistering, unforgiving heat of the ancient Near East.
Just absolutely brutal conditions.
Right. And you are watching a man, an incredibly old man, methodically pack a knife.
A knife, a bundle of wood.
Exactly, the hot coals for a fire, and he's saddling a donkey to go on a 3-day journey.
Yeah.
And the most terrifying part of this whole scene isn't the brutal landscape he's walking into.
No, it's not the desert.
It's the fact that he knows at the end of this journey he's expected to sacrifice his own future, his own blood, literally on an altar.
It's a heavy, heavy image.
It really is. So today we are taking a deep dive into the blood, the betrayals, the staggering grief, and the deeply flawed human beings who accidentally built the foundations of the modern world.
Yeah, accidentally is the right word there.
We are plunging into a massive foundational narrative, Genesis, chapters 21 through 26.
And this is such a critical section.
Right. And whether you have studied these ancient texts for decades or, you're hearing about them for the absolute first time, we are not here to give you a sanitized, dry theological lecture.
Definitely not.
We are hunting for the mechanics of human behavior.
And that is, honestly, such a crucial distinction to make right up front.
Yeah.
Because to really understand the wisdom locked in these chapters, you have to strip away the stained glass windows,
Yeah.
the Sunday school felt boards.
The polished versions of the stories.
Exactly. We are entering a world of severe scarcity. We are looking at a massive transitional period in an ancient nomadic world.
It's a harsh reality.
It is. This is the era of the patriarchs,
Yeah.
specifically Abraham and his son Isaac. But, they aren't the polished saints we often make them out to be.
No,
They are navigating intense family dysfunction, geopolitical vulnerability, periods of severe famine.
just constant survival mode.
Constant, profound grief, and the brutal struggle to secure a legacy in a land that isn't fully theirs yet.
Right.
It's a world where survival is this daily, grueling negotiation. And the promises of a grand destiny are vast, but they're just constantly deferred.
Which means we are going to see human nature stripped down to its studs in this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to witness biology-defying births. We'll explore the, frankly, horrific realities of sending family members into the desert to die.
It is really dark.
It does. We'll analyze some of the most shrewd, calculating business negotiations in ancient history.
And the family drama.
Oh, the drama. We are going to tear apart the psychology of a petty sibling rivalry over a bowl of soup that literally reroutes the course of human history.
It is the absolute definition of a messy inheritance.
Yeah.
Usually when we talk about legacy today, we think of like a trust fund, right? A notarized will, a clean transfer of assets.
This thing orderly.
Right, orderly. But here the inheritance is murky, it's contested, and it's just fraught with trauma.
So let's start with a moment that was, 25 years in the making?
25 long years, yeah.
It's this moment of impossible joy that almost instantly fractures a family. I'm talking about the birth of Isaac and the immediate fallout in Abraham's camp in chapter 21.
It's a huge turning point.
Abraham is 100 years old. Sarah is 90.
Which is just
Biologically, the window hasn't just closed, it's been bricked over, right?
completely bricked over.
Yet the promised son arrives, and they name him Isaac, which literally translates to, he laughs.
And the linguistics there are fascinating, really.
How so?
Well, it's a direct callback to the psychological state of his parents. Our sources, and many historical commentators, note the profound evolution of laughter in this story.
Oh, right, because there were different kinds of laughter.
Exactly. Earlier in the narrative, when Sarah first overheard the divine promise that she would have a child, she laughed. But it wasn't a laugh of joy.
No, it was cynical.
Yeah, it was the laugh of deep, protective cynicism.
Right, because if you've been disappointed for decades, the absolute most dangerous thing you can do is hope.
Hope is terrifying at that point.
Her first laugh was basically a defense mechanism. She was essentially saying, look at my body, look at my husband, the universe has got to be kidding.
Precisely. It was the laughter of distrust. But now, holding this physical child, the laugh transforms into pure, unadulterated wonder.
It's a complete shift.
It is. She says, God has made me to laugh so that all that hear will laugh with me. It's the laugh of total fulfillment.
Wow.
But, in the ancient Near East, giving birth was really only the first hurdle.
Right, because infant mortality rates were astronomically high back then.
Astronomically. Surviving the first few days, let alone the first few years, was never guaranteed.
So just making it to toddlerhood was a huge deal.
Huge. So the narrative quickly moves forward to a great feast. Abraham throws this massive celebration on the day Isaac is weaned.
Which, historically speaking, would put Isaac at around 2 or 3 years old.
Exactly. Reaching the age of weaning was a major sociological milestone.
Okay.
It meant the child had survived the most precarious window of life and was now officially recognized as a permanent, viable member of the household.
But this celebration, this milestone, is the exact moment the dynamic inside the tent completely shatters.
Everything falls apart.
Because while everyone is celebrating this toddler, there is another son watching from the edges of the camp.
Ishmael.
This is Abraham's older son, the one he had with Sarah's Egyptian servant, Hagar, back when they thought Sarah would never conceive.
Right.
And Ishmael is a teenager now. He's probably around 15 or 16 years old.
Yeah, that's the estimated age.
And Sarah looks over and sees Ishmael mocking or laughing at Isaac, and she absolutely loses her mind.
She does. And to understand Sarah's explosive reaction here, we really have to look at the mechanics of primogeniture.
The right of succession.
Exactly, in the ancient world. You kind of have to put yourself in Ishmael's shoes for a second.
Okay, let's do that.
For 14 years, Ishmael was the center of Abraham's universe.
He was the only son.
He was the undisputed crown prince, the presumed heir to a massive, wealthy, nomadic empire he was trained to lead.
Right.
And then suddenly, this biological anomaly happens. Sarah has a child. And at this weaning feast, the reality of the geopolitical shift finally hits Ishmael.
It becomes real.
Yeah. He is no longer the primary heir. He's essentially been demoted.
So his mocking wasn't just, a teenager teasing a toddler. It was loaded with resentment.
Yes. The commentator Albert Barnes points out that some deep bitterness of feeling likely arose here.
That makes sense.
Ishmael's laugh was a laugh of derision, maybe even a threat to the established order. And Sarah, recognizing the threat to her own son's legacy, demands the ultimate severance.
She wants him gone.
Completely. She tells Abraham, "Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this servant will not be heir with my son."
Now, I have to push back hard on this, though. Because as a modern reader looking at this is where the text becomes incredibly difficult to stomach.
It's very harsh.
Sarah's demand isn't just harsh, it sounds barbaric. And the text says Abraham is deeply grieved because he genuinely loves Ishmael.
He does. He's a father.
But God actually intervenes and tells Abraham to listen to Sarah, promising that Ishmael will be protected and made into a great nation, too.
Right.
So Abraham wakes up early, hands Hagar a skin of water and some bread, and just sends a mother and a teenager out into the wilderness of Beersheba. I mean, it feels like a death sentence.
It is a completely valid reaction to be horrified by this. We hear this and recoil.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the text does not apologize for the brutality of the ancient world. It doesn't sugarcoat Sarah's ruthless jealousy or the extreme vulnerability of a displaced servant.
Hagar had no power.
None. In the social hierarchy of the ancient Near East, Hagar, an Egyptian servant, a single mother without tribal protection, she was the lowest of the low. She was entirely disposable to the dominant culture.
And the geography of the Beersheba wilderness is totally unforgiving.
Lethal.
The narrative tracks their descent into despair. The water in the skin inevitably runs out. The heat takes over.
And she has to watch her son suffer.
Right. Hagar watches her teenage son begin to succumb to dehydration. She places him under a shrub because she cannot bear to watch him die.
It's heartbreaking.
She walks a bowshot away, collapses, and just weeps. It is an agonizing, almost cinematic depiction of total hopelessness.
It really is. But, and this is key, the enduring wisdom of this text isn't found in endorsing Sarah's cruelty or normalizing the exile.
Okay, where's the wisdom then?
The wisdom is found in the mechanism of the divine response. Because in an era where local deities were believed to only care about kings and conquerors, the God of this narrative does something radically different.
He pays attention to Hagar.
Yes. He hears the cry of the absolute lowest person on the socioeconomic ladder. The text specifically notes, God heard the voice of the boy.
Wow.
An angel calls out to Hagar, tells her not to fear, and then something fascinating happens.
And this is the part that completely alters how I view crisis management, honestly.
Yeah.
The text says God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. He didn't strike a rock with lightning to create a miraculous new spring,
Right. He didn't conjure water from nowhere.
He didn't drop a rainstorm. The well was already there.
That is the crucial insight. The well was there. Her physiological panic, the crushing grief of anticipating her son's death, had literally altered her perception of reality.
It blinded her.
Yes. Her terror blinded her to the provision that was already existing in her immediate environment.
It's terrifying because human neurobiology works exactly the same way today.
Oh, absolutely.
When we hit peak stress, our brain bumps us full of cortisol. We lose access to our peripheral vision, both literally and metaphorically.
We get tunnel vision.
Exactly. It makes me think of a highly relatable modern scenario.
Let's hear it.
Okay, imagine you were sitting in a crowded airport terminal. Your flight is delayed, your phone is at 1% battery, and you are waiting on a critical career-defining email.
That is a nightmare scenario.
Right. You are having a complete internal meltdown, staring at the red battery icon, completely paralyzed by the stress of the impending failure.
Sweating it out.
And you are so blinded by your own panic that you don't even realize you were sitting 3 feet away from a wall outlet.
Oh, wow.
The power source is right there. It's built into the wall, but your despair has made it invisible to you.
That is the perfect translation of Hagar's moment in the desert. Despair creates a profound tunnel vision. It hides our resources.
So if you are listening to this deep dive right now, think about a wilderness moment you are currently navigating.
We all have them.
Maybe it's a financial crisis, a sudden medical diagnosis, or a catastrophic failure at work. You feel exhausted. Your emotional water skin is completely empty.
You feel like you're out of options.
Exactly. You are convinced you are out of options. How often is that very despair blinding you to the wells of provision, the support, or the alternative solutions that are actually sitting right in front of you?
And that leads to the practice you have to implement here. It's the discipline of active seeking.
Active seeking.
Right. When your brain is screaming that the water is gone, you have to force a pause.
Yeah.
You have to consciously ask yourself, am I looking at the whole landscape or am I only staring at the empty bottle?
That's powerful.
What hidden resources, maybe a mentor you haven't called, a skill you've forgotten you have, or a community network you've ignored are already present in your environment?
That is such a grounded takeaway. You have to open your eyes to the well that is already there.
Yeah.
But speaking of terrifying wilderness experiences, the narrative refuses to let Abraham off the hook.
It definitely doesn't.
He had to let go of Ishmael, which was painful enough. But what happens when you are asked to let go of the very thing you were promised?
The promised son.
The one thing you built your entire life around. That brings us to Genesis 22, the ultimate test and the absolute paradox of surrender.
This is widely considered one of the most complex, psychologically dense, and challenging narratives in all of ancient literature.
No question.
We are talking about the binding of Isaac. God tests Abraham with a command that shatters every category of reason. He says, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go into the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you.
We have to stop and adjust the elephant in the room immediately.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Because if you read this text with a modern sensibility, it is horrifying. The idea of a deity demanding child sacrifice is abhorrent.
It is.
It makes the God of this narrative sound like a monster. If the goal of this text is to teach us wisdom, how do we get past a command that violates our deepest moral instincts?
You really can't get past it unless you deeply understand the geopolitical and religious context of the ancient Near East.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, the commentator Albert Barnes, along with many historical anthropologists, points out that human sacrifice, specifically child sacrifice, was not an unknown or alien concept in the surrounding Canaanite cultures.
Wait, really? It was common.
Yes. In fact, in cults like that of Molech, offering your firstborn child was considered the ultimate gold standard demonstration of devotion to a deity.
That's chilling.
It was. It was believed to ensure the fertility of the land and the survival of the tribe.
So to Abraham, living amidst these cultures, the command to sacrifice his son wouldn't have sounded like a bizarre departure from the norm.
Not at all.
It would have sounded like God asking for the same extreme devotion that his neighbors were giving to their gods.
Exactly. It was the expected currency of ultimate religious devotion in that specific era. And that is why the ending of this story is the actual shock.
Right, the twist.
What makes this narrative revolutionary isn't the command itself. It is the divine reversal at the climax.
Because just as Abraham raises the knife, the angel of the Lord stops him. God provides a ram caught in a thicket to be sacrificed instead.
Yes, and this text served as a massive, definitive cultural disruptor.
A disruptor.
It was a theological polemic against the surrounding nations. It was the God of Abraham going on the record permanently to say, I am not like the gods of Canaan. I absolutely reject human victims. Man is not a fit sacrifice.
So it was drawing a line in the sand.
A very clear line. The narrative definitively separates the Israelite tradition from the barbaric practices of their neighbors. The true sacrifice required wasn't the blood of a child. It was the total surrender of the human will.
Even knowing that historical context, though, the psychological tension of the journey to the mountain is almost unbearable to think about.
It's agonizing.
The text says Abraham rises early, he saddles his donkey, he physically chops the wood for the burnt offering, he takes the fire and the knife, and they walk for 3 days.
3 days.
The distance from Beersheba to Moriah, which is modern-day Jerusalem, is roughly 45 miles of uphill, rugged terrain, 3 days of walking. The torment in Abraham's mind with every single step, every campfire they built at night must have been agonizing.
And notice the dialogue. It is sparse, but it carries immense weight.
Yeah.
At this point, Isaac is not a toddler. He is a young man. He is physically carrying the wood up the mountain himself.
He's fully capable.
He is. He sees the fire and the wood, but he recognizes the missing element. He breaks the silence and says, "My father." And Abraham, carrying the weight of the universe on his shoulders, replies, "Here I am, my son."
It is so raw. Isaac asks, "Where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" And Abraham, holding on to a razor-thin thread of faith, says, God will provide for himself the lamb.
He's caught.
He's totally caught between the reality of the command and his foundational belief in the goodness of God. And after the ram is provided, Abraham names the place Jehovah-Jireh, which translates to "the Lord will provide."
Many commentators view this as the absolute pinnacle of Abraham's spiritual and psychological evolution.
Oh, so.
You have to contrast this moment with his past behavior. Decades earlier, when he went down to Egypt, he was so terrified for his own life that he lied and passed his wife off as his sister.
Right, he put Sarah in danger.
He put her in immense danger just to save his own skin. He was a man driven by self-preservation.
Okay, I see the contrast.
But here, on Moriah, he has reached a point where he trusts the divine architecture of his life so implicitly that he is willing to surrender his most prized possession, his entire legacy, the very fulfillment of the promise he waited a century for.
So how does this translate to us today? Because thankfully, none of us are being asked to climb a mountain with a knife.
Right, hopefully not.
But the psychological mechanism of this story is incredibly relevant to modern ambition and anxiety. It comes down to the difference between holding our deepest desires with a closed fist versus an open hand.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, the closed fist.
Yeah, when we operate with a closed fist, we are driven by fear, control, and scarcity. We grip our goals, our relationships, or our status so tightly because we're fundamentally saying, I cannot survive without this. If I lose this, I lose my identity.
Exactly. And that grip eventually suffocates the very thing you were trying to protect.
It really does. So think about the Isaacs in your own life right now. What is the one thing you feel you cannot live without?
Everyone has something.
Is it a specific career trajectory? Are you gripping a relationship so tightly that you are becoming toxic and controlling?
Yeah.
Is it your public reputation? Or maybe it's a very specific, rigid vision for what your future is supposed to look like.
And the profound paradox of surrender is that when you make an idol out of your ambition, when you believe it is the only source of your security, it dictates your every emotional state. It destroys your peace.
The wisdom of Moriah is about radical detachment. It's the counterintuitive truth that when we finally open our fist, when we surrender our ultimate attachments and say, I trust the broader architecture of my life more than my own micromanagement, we actually get our lives back in a healthier, freer way.
Yes.
Just as Abraham received Isaac back, not as a possession he owned, but as a gift.
It forces you to ask, is your foundational trust in the gift you've been given, or is it in the giver? Are you worshiping the outcome, or are you trusting the process?
It's a heavy, deeply introspective question, but the narrative is relentless. It doesn't let Abraham or Isaac stay on that spiritual mountaintop.
Real life kicks back in.
Almost immediately after this intense peak of faith, gravity takes hold. We come crashing back down to the inevitable, mundane realities of human mortality, grief, and the very practical business of securing a future.
Which brings us to Genesis 23 and 24. Grief, commerce, and the search for character.
Yes.
We shift dramatically from the theological heights of Moriah to the gritty reality of a funeral and a real estate negotiation.
Quite the pivot.
Sarah dies at the age of 127 in Hebron, and Abraham faces a severe practical crisis.
Because he doesn't own any land.
Right. Despite all the divine promises that his descendants will own this land, Abraham is still, legally speaking, a resident alien. He is a sojourner. He doesn't own a single square inch of Canaan, and he needs a permanent, undisputed burial site for his wife.
So he approaches the local leaders, the Hittites, and we get this incredibly detailed, almost tedious account of a public negotiation at the city gates.
It's a very formal process.
Abraham wants to buy the cave of Machpelah from a man named Ephron. Abraham says, let him give it to me for the full price. But Ephron stands up in front of the whole town council and plays the benevolent local lord.
He plays to the crowd.
He does. He says, no, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the presence of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead.
And, if you read that with a Western 21st century mindset, Ephron sounds incredibly generous.
He sounds like a great guy.
But historical context completely flips the script here. This is where understanding ancient Near Eastern feudal law and etiquette is critical. Ephron isn't actually offering the land for free.
There's a catch.
Always. As Barnes and other historians note, this was a highly stylized cultural dance. The offer of a gift was made with the strict unspoken expectation that the receiver would humbly decline the free gift and offer to pay an ample, often inflated, equivalent.
It's so relatable, though. It's the ancient equivalent of the polite fight over a dinner check at a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I mean. When a friend loudly insists, put your wallet away, I've got this. But you know full well they expect you to push back and say, absolutely not, we are splitting it.
Right, it's a test.
If you actually just said thanks and put your wallet away, the relationship would be permanently damaged.
That's a great modern parallel.
Mm-hmm.
But the stakes here were much, much higher than a dinner check. There were complex Hittite laws regarding land ownership and taxes, specifically a feudal obligation called ilku.
Ilku.
Yes. If Ephron merely gave Abraham the cave or sold only a fraction of his property, Ephron might still be legally liable for the taxes and military service tied to that land.
Wow, okay.
By framing it as a gift, Ephron retains ultimate sovereignty. Abraham would essentially be a tenant, and the gift could be disputed or revoked by Ephron's heirs down the line.
Abraham sees right through the maneuver then.
He absolutely does.
He knows that if he accepts a favor, his legacy is vulnerable. So he insists on a clean, legally binding commercial transaction. He weighs out 400 shekels of silver, according to the current merchant standard.
And we should note that 400 shekels of silver was an exorbitant amount of money.
How much are we talking?
It's roughly 10 pounds of silver. Abraham is drastically overpaying, but he does it intentionally to ensure that the deed is ironclad. He secures a permanent, undisputed legacy.
It's the first actual physical piece of the promised land that the family legally, tangibly owns.
Yes.
I love this because it proves that being a person of deep faith doesn't mean you check your practical business sense at the door.
Not at all.
Abraham just came off a mountain where he surrendered everything to God, but when he gets back to town, he demands a legally binding contract and pays market price. You have to ground your legacy in reality.
Exactly. Legal frameworks matter. But a legal framework without a competent successor is useless.
Which leads us directly into chapter 24.
Right. Abraham is now very old. He has the land, he has the wealth, but Isaac needs a wife to carry the legacy forward. And Abraham is adamant that Isaac should not marry into the Canaanite culture that surrounds them.
Likely because of the very practices like child sacrifice that we just discussed.
Yes, he wants to maintain that separation.
Right. So Abraham calls his senior servant, the man who manages his entire estate, and makes him swear an oath to travel back to Abraham's homeland, to Mesopotamia, to find a wife from his own relatives.
It's a massive journey.
Roughly 400 miles. The servant takes an entourage of 10 camels loaded with wealth and sets off. And when he finally arrives at the city of Nahor, he stops at the well outside the city just as evening is falling, which is when the women come out to draw water.
And what happens next is just a masterclass in evaluating human character.
Yeah.
The servant doesn't just start interviewing people. He doesn't look for the wealthiest family. He prays for a highly specific behavioral sign. He says, "Let the young woman to whom I shall say, 'Please let down your jar that I may drink,' and who shall say, 'Drink, and I will water your camels.' Let her be the one."
Okay, I have to stop and challenge this.
Go for it.
Because on the surface, this sounds completely superstitious. It sounds like a guy flipping a coin or asking the universe for a random magic trick to make a massive life decision.
I can see why it looks that way.
Why would you base the future of your master's empire on whether a girl says a specific phrase at a well?
It absolutely looks superstitious until you unpack the biological and logistical reality of what he was asking. You really have to consider the animals involved here.
The camels.
Right. This wasn't a request to water a couple of horses. He had 10 camels that had just crossed a desert. A thirsty camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in about 13 minutes.
Wait, 30 gallons per camel?
Per camel.
He had 10 of them.
Yes. We are talking about potentially 300 gallons of water. Now think about the mechanics of an ancient well.
Okay.
Rebecca is drawing this water by hand. She is walking down the steps to a spring, filling a single clay jar which might hold 3 gallons and weigh 25 pounds when full, carrying it back up the steps and emptying it into a trough.
Over and over and over again.
Over and over. To water 10 camels, she is looking at making perhaps 100 trips.
That is mind-blowing. That is hours of backbreaking, exhausting physical labor.
Exactly. The servant wasn't asking for a magical sign. He engineered an extreme stress test of virtue.
A stress test. I like that.
He was looking for a very specific type of character. He needed a woman who possessed extraordinary hospitality, a relentless work ethic, physical stamina, and a generous spirit that was willing to go absurdly above and beyond for an absolute stranger.
It's the ultimate behavioral interview. He didn't ask for her resume. He put her in a situation where her character had to act.
And commentator Matthew Henry points out that the servant was looking for someone who was humble, industrious, and courteous. Rebecca passes this grueling test with flying colors.
She volunteers for the work.
She does. Furthermore, when the servant explains who he is and asks her family if she will return with him to marry Isaac, her family hesitates. They ask Rebecca what she wants to do. She exercises her own profound agency and says, I will go.
She is decisive.
Decisive, courageous, and ready to step into this massive legacy.
This translates so perfectly to how we operate today. Think about how you evaluate the people you bring into your life, whether you are hiring for your company, choosing a business partner, or selecting a spouse.
Right. What are you looking for?
Do you just look at their pedigree, their stated skills, or how well they talk in a structured interview? Or do you design ways to observe their character in the wild?
That's the real test.
Do you watch how they treat the waiter at the restaurant? Do you see how they handle an unexpected inconvenience?
You have to watch how they treat the stranger at the well. Because true legacy requires a balance. It requires the shrewd, practical grounding of reality, like Abraham securing the legal deed to the land, and the active, intentional pursuit of deep moral character, like the servant testing Rebecca.
The legal framework protects the assets, but the moral framework ensures the assets aren't destroyed by the next generation.
Beautifully said.
And at first glance, it seems like Abraham succeeded perfectly. Rebecca goes back to Canaan, she marries Isaac, and the text says she brought him comfort after his mother's death. It feels like a beautiful, happily ever after conclusion to Abraham's life.
But human nature abhors a vacuum, and it certainly abhors perfection. The story doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't, because the very next generation is about to introduce a whole new level of dysfunction.
It gets complicated again.
Which brings us to Genesis 25, the generational shift and the danger of instant gratification. This chapter proves that the greatest threats to a legacy rarely come from external enemies. They usually incubate right inside your own tent.
Let's set the stage for this generational handoff. Abraham takes another wife, Keturah, has more children, provides for them, and eventually dies at the incredibly old age of 175.
A full life.
The narrative gives us this brief, poignant moment where Isaac and his exiled brother Ishmael actually reunite to bury their father in the cave of Machpelah, the very cave Abraham bought.
It's a rare moment of peace, but the camera immediately pans to Isaac and Rebecca, and the peace dissolves.
Yes, history repeats itself. Like Sarah before her, Rebecca struggles with infertility for 20 long years. Isaac prays to the Lord, and Rebecca finally conceives. But it is not a peaceful pregnancy.
Not at all.
She is carrying twins, and the text says the children literally struggled together within her womb. It's an agonizing physical experience. She inquires of the Lord, and she receives a prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb. The older shall serve the younger.
The biological differences between these twins are stark from the moment they take their first breath.
Very obvious differences.
The first one comes out red and covered in hair, looking almost like a garment. They name him Esau. The second one comes out immediately after, and his hand is literally gripping his brother's heel.
Gripping the heel.
So they name him Jacob, which translates to he takes the heel, or the supplanter.
And as they grow up, those physical differences evolve into completely opposing lifestyles. Esau becomes a wild man, a skillful hunter, a man who lives for the adrenaline of the open field.
And Jacob.
Jacob is described as a quiet or mild man, dwelling in tents, preferring the domestic, calculating, settled life of the camp.
And this is where Isaac and Rebekah completely fail as parents. They institutionalize a toxic divide.
It's hard to watch.
The text plainly states, Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. It is blatant parental favoritism based on utility.
Pure utility.
Isaac favors the son who provides him with status and protein. Rebekah favors the son who stays close to home and fits the prophecy she heard. It is a recipe for absolute disaster.
It creates an environment of intense competition, and it all boils over in one of the most infamous culinary moments in human history.
The bowl of red soup. Let's unpack the mechanics of this scene.
Let's do it.
Esau comes in from the open field one day. He is completely exhausted. He is famished, likely having failed his hunt. Jacob is sitting safely in the tent, boiling a thick stew of red lentils.
The smell must have been incredible.
Oh, the smell of the spices and the protein must have been overwhelming. Esau walks in and says, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." And Jacob, the quiet, calculating man in the tent, sees a moment of extreme vulnerability and strikes.
He sees his opening?
He says, "Sell me your birthright now."
Before we judge Esau's reaction, we have to understand what a birthright actually was in this culture. It wasn't just a symbolic title.
No, it had a real weight.
Immense economic and social weight in the ancient Near East. It meant taking over the leadership of the entire tribe upon the father's death. It guaranteed a double portion of a physical inheritance.
Huge.
But in this specific family, the family of Abraham, it carried a massive spiritual cosmic weight. It meant being the recognized heir to the covenant with God. It was a permanent, future-oriented, multi-generational blessing.
It was the most valuable asset a person could possibly possess. And how does Esau respond to Jacob's demand?
He fell.
He says, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" So he swears an oath. He legally transfers his birthright to Jacob. He eats the bread and the lentil stew. He drinks, he gets up, and he walks away.
It's staggering.
The narrative summarizes the entire catastrophic transaction with one chilling sentence. Thus, Esau despised his birthright.
The commentator Matthew Henry focuses heavily on this phrase. He calls it Esau's profane contempt for his own destiny.
Profane contempt.
He trades an asset of infinite eternal value for a temporary morsel of meat. He allowed the physiological cravings of his body in the present moment to completely overwrite his identity, his responsibilities, and his future.
And before we shake our heads at how foolish Esau was, we have to realize that this exact mechanism plays out in our own neurobiology every single day.
It absolutely does.
We can explain this through the lens of decision fatigue and hyperbolic discounting. When Esau came in from the field, his blood sugar was likely crashed. His cortisol levels were spiking.
He was running on fumes.
In a state of physical exhaustion or starvation, the human brain literally reroutes processing power away from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that handles long-term planning, logic, and consequence evaluation.
Right. It shuts down the advanced thinking.
It routes everything through the amygdala and the limbic system, which only care about immediate survival and instant gratification.
So his biology hijacked his legacy. It was the absolute triumph of the immediate over the important.
Yes. And we do this all the time. It's doom spending when you're stressed. It's cashing out your 401k to buy a sports car today because you had a bad quarter at work.
It's so common.
It's the human brain prioritizing an immediate hit of dopamine over a long-term compounding purpose.
But we also have to look at the other side of the table. We often judge Esau, but what about Jacob?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I have to challenge the traditional reading that paints Jacob as the clever hero here.
He's definitely not the hero in this moment.
Jacob wasn't being clever. He was being incredibly manipulative and predatory. He sees his own brother in a state of physical and emotional vulnerability, and instead of offering him a bowl of soup out of basic human decency, he extorts him. He predates on his weakness.
You are absolutely right to push back on that. Jacob's actions are highly Machiavellian. Commentators consistently point out Jacob's indirect opportunistic nature.
He knew what he was doing.
Jacob likely knew about the prophecy his mother received, that the older would serve the younger. But instead of trusting the divine timeline, he forces the issue through ruthless extortion. And this is a crucial point of discernment when reading ancient wisdom literature.
Which is?
The biblical text does not praise Jacob for this extortion.
It doesn't endorse his behavior.
No, it simply reports it as historical fact. It holds up a mirror to the reality that these patriarchs are deeply flawed, calculating individuals.
They're human.
It's very human. Jacob's manipulation secures the legal birthright, but it fractures his family, breeds decades of hatred, and sets him on a path of exile and suffering that will haunt him for a long time. The text condemns Esau's short-sightedness, but it doesn't canonize Jacob's cruelty. It highlights a fundamental human weakness in both men.
So let's bring this dynamic into your life right now. We all have a bowl of red stew sitting in front of us. What is your bowl of red stew?
Everyone's got one.
What immediate burning craving are you allowing to bankrupt your long-term goals and your deepest values?
Oh, it rarely looks like a bowl of lentils today.
Right. It could be the craving to express your unhinged anger in a staff meeting, sacrificing a 10-year working relationship just to feel the immediate rush of being right in the moment.
Or a toxic habit.
It could be a toxic habit. It could be the endless cycle of doom scrolling on your phone, sacrificing hours of productive energy and mental peace for a fleeting distraction because you are tired.
It is whatever urge screams at your limbic system, I need this right now or I'm going to die, which is the exact lie Esau believed.
So here is a highly practical reflection for your week. Identify one specific area where you are consistently sacrificing the permanent on the altar of the immediate. Where are you trading your birthright for soup?
That's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is, but you have to do it. And then practice a deliberate mechanical pause. When that craving hits, force a wedge of time between the stimulus and your response.
Just create some space.
Walk away from the keyboard. Put the phone in another room, take 10 deep breaths, re-engage your prefrontal cortex so you can remember your actual values.
Sometimes a 10-second pause is all it takes to remind yourself of your birthright.
Absolutely. So we've dissected the deeply flawed nature of both the sons, but this theme of flawed humans carrying a great legacy continues when we check back in with their father.
Isaac.
Because Isaac proves that we don't just invent new mistakes, we often recycle the worst behaviors of our parents. This brings us to Genesis 26, repeating the past and the strategy of retreat.
The chapter opens with an environmental crisis. A severe famine strikes the land of Canaan. The text specifically notes it is a different famine than the one in Abraham's day.
So history repeats, literally.
Yes. Isaac has to move his massive household to survive. He heads toward Gerar into the territory of Abimelech, the king of the Philistines.
And at this exact moment of crisis, God appears to Isaac and explicitly renews the Abrahamic covenant with him.
A very clear promise.
God says, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you. I will multiply your offspring." It is a direct, unambiguous promise of divine protection and prosperity.
The promise is explicitly confirmed. Isaac has the ultimate security guarantee.
What happens next is a stunning, almost tragicomic display of human frailty.
It's unbelievable, really.
The local men of Gerar notice Rebekah because she is very beautiful. They ask Isaac about her, and Isaac, terrified that these men might murder him in order to take his wife, lies to them. He says, "She is my sister."
I mean, the repetition here is glaring.
It's exactly what Abraham did.
Isaac pulls the exact same scam his father pulled. Abraham lied about Sarah being his sister twice, out of the exact same fear of being killed by local warlords.
We really need to unpack the mechanics of this. Why does Isaac do this? He just had a direct encounter with God, promising to protect him. Why does he immediately revert to cowardice and deceit?
Because fear is deeply ingrained,
Yep.
and survival tactics are inherited. It is a textbook, ancient illustration of what modern psychology calls transgenerational trauma or repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion.
Yes, we absorb the psychological coping mechanisms of our parents without even realizing it. Abraham's lack of trust in a moment of crisis, his instinct to use his wife as a human shield, became a learned behavioral pattern for his son.
Even with God's promise ringing in his ears.
Even with explicit divine promises. When the environmental pressure mounts, Isaac's nervous system defaults to the family playbook: deceit, manipulation, and self-preservation at the expense of his partner's safety.
It is so humbling because it's so true of all of us. We swear we will never make the same mistakes our parents made. We judge them for their flaws.
We all do it.
And then the moment we hit a point of high stress or professional danger, We open our mouths and we sound exactly like them. We deploy their exact same toxic defense mechanisms.
And just like his father, Isaac's lie is eventually exposed. King Abimelech looks out a window and sees Isaac sporting or caressing Rebekah in a way that makes it undeniably obvious they are husband and wife.
Abimelech summons Isaac and rightly rebukes him. He says, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us."
Abimelech then issues a strict public decree protecting them both under penalty of death.
And this is where the narrative takes a fascinating turn. Despite Isaac's moral failure, despite his cowardice, the divine blessing remains intact.
It's surprising.
Isaac sows seed in the land of Gerar, and in that same year, he reaps 100-fold return.
The economic boom is staggering. He acquires massive flocks of sheep, herds of cattle, and a great number of servants. He becomes the dominant economic force in the region.
But with wealth comes problems.
In the ancient world, as in the modern world, extreme wealth generates extreme envy. The Philistines become jealous, and Abimelech essentially evicts him, saying, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we."
And to enforce this eviction, the Philistines utilize a devastating tactic. They go out and systematically stop up all the wells that Abraham's servants had dug decades earlier, filling them with earth.
We have to understand the hydrology and the geopolitics of the Negev desert to grasp how aggressive this was. Water isn't just a convenience, it is life itself.
Right.
A well in this arid region was a massive infrastructure project. You had to dig deep through solid limestone to hit the water table. A functioning well was a marker of wealth. It sustained your herds, and it established legal property rights over the surrounding grazing lands.
So stopping up someone's well wasn't a prank, it was economic sabotage.
It was an attempt to erase Abraham's legacy from the landscape. It was a direct act of war.
So Isaac faces a critical decision. He has a massive household. He is wealthy and powerful. He could easily arm his men and fight the Philistines. He has the legal and moral high ground.
He absolutely could have fought.
But instead, he chooses a different path. He retreats to the valley of Gerar. He clears out the dirt from his father's old wells. And then his servants dig a brand new well in the valley, and they strike a spring of flowing water.
But the local herdsmen of Gerar immediately show up and argue with Isaac's men, claiming, "The water is ours."
So Isaac names that well Esek, which translates to contention or strife. And what is his next move? Does he dig his heels in and fight for his rights?
No, he yields.
He abandons the well, moves his camp, and digs another one.
And the locals follow him and argue over that one too.
Yes, the opposition is relentless. So he names the second well Sitna, which means hostility or enmity. And once again, against all the instincts of a powerful man, he yields.
He moves even further away.
He digs a third well. And this time, finally, there's no argument. The locals leave him alone. He names this third well Rehoboth, which translates to broad places or room. Isaac declares, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land."
This progression of the wells Esek, Sitna, and Rehoboth is an absolute masterclass in conflict resolution. It is one of the most practical, applicable frameworks for navigating modern professional and personal disputes.
Think of Esek and Sitna as the endless battles we are constantly drawn into in our careers or our relationships. Isaac had the absolute right to that water. His men did the labor. He had the power to fight and win.
But he recognized a deeper strategic truth.
Right. Engaging in endless contention and hostility over a single point of friction would drain his resources, endanger his family, and lock him into a prominent cycle of warfare. The opportunity cost of fighting was higher than the value of the well.
So he chose not to escalate to bloodshed. He yielded the tactical point in order to win the larger strategic war of survival.
He employed the strategy of retreat, and Rehoboth represents the ultimate reward of that strategic retreat. He found the geographical and emotional space to thrive without the constant draining friction of his enemies.
Exactly. It's the exact same dynamic as leaving a toxic workplace.
Yes. You might be in a job right now where you are constantly fighting over credit for your work. Every single project planning meeting is an Esek, a point of bitter contention.
And every interaction with your manager is a Sitna filled with hostility and political backstabbing.
You might be completely in the right. You might deserve the promotion and the credit. But if you spend all your creative and emotional energy fighting those battles, you will stagnate.
Sometimes the most powerful, dominant thing you can do is walk away.
Leave the toxic environment, abandon the well you dug, and start your own venture, or join a new team where there is Rehoboth, room to breathe, room to innovate, and room to actually be fruitful.
That is a profound reframing. In our highly competitive modern culture, walking away is almost always coded as losing. It is seen as weakness.
But Isaac's journey demonstrates that knowing when to walk away from a useless, draining fight is a sign of immense emotional maturity and strategic vision.
So the question you have to ask yourself this week is this. Are you exhausting your emotional, physical, and professional energy fighting over an e-cig?
Are you locked in a battle of sitna with a family member or a colleague just to prove that you are right? When is walking away not a surrender, but a strategic, necessary move toward your own Rehoboth?
It is a question that requires deep discernment. And for Isaac, the strategy pays off brilliantly. Eventually, King Abimelech travels out to Isaac's camp. He recognizes that Isaac has prospered despite the opposition, and he asks to make a formal peace treaty.
Isaac throws a feast. They swear oaths of non-aggression, and Isaac's men discover water in yet another new well, which he names Sheba, meaning oath. The man who refused to fight ultimately secures a lasting peace.
It's a beautiful resolution. Those who pursue peace strategically often end up dictating the terms of it. But true to the incredibly messy, realistic nature of this family narrative, the chapter refuses to end on a perfectly happy note.
Right. We pan back to Esau. Esau is now 40 years old. And completely ignoring the family's mandate against marrying into the local Canaanite culture, he goes out and marries 2 Hittite women.
And the text ends with this heavy, somber note. These women made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah.
It's a stark reminder that even when you successfully navigate your external enemies and secure your physical borders, the story of a legacy is far from neatly wrapped up inside your own home.
The legacy continues to be incredibly complicated.
And that brings us to the close of our deep dive into these foundational chapters of Genesis. Let's synthesize the massive amount of ground we've covered on this journey. We started this hour looking for a clean, precise blueprint for building a legacy. We wanted the notarized legal document.
But what we found is that ancient wisdom isn't about perfect people doing perfect things. It is not a sanitized highlight reel.
Far from it. It is about deeply flawed, fearful, calculating human beings. It is about a mother's ruthless, protective instincts. It is about a father pushed to the absolute psychological brink of letting go of his deepest attachment.
It is about securing a future through shrewd negotiation and recognizing that the profound value of a person's character, their willingness to water 10 camels, matters more than their pedigree.
It is about the neurobiological danger of sacrificing our long-term sacred purpose for the instant dopamine hit of a bowl of stew.
And it is about recognizing our inherited traumas, breaking generational cycles of fear, and having the strategic courage to walk away from a toxic fight to find our own room to grow.
The enduring wisdom of this text lies exactly in its messy, unfiltered reality, because that is where we actually live.
Exactly. I want to leave you, our listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you navigate your own life this week. We talked about Isaac's journey with the wells. In Genesis 26, before his men could dig the fresh, new wells in the valley, Isaac had to do something tedious.
He had to unstop the old wells that his father Abraham had dug decades earlier. He had to take a shovel and clear out the dirt, the rocks, and the debris that the enemy had thrown in to choke off the water supply.
You had to reclaim the infrastructure that was already there.
Yes. So think about the landscape of your own life. What wells of wisdom, of joy, of purpose, of deep resilience, or of faith did previous generations, your parents, your mentors, your cultural ancestors, dig for you?
And have those wells been clogged up over the years by the cynicism, the endless digital distraction, or the hostility of the current world?
We live in a culture that is obsessed with the novel. We love to build the new and discard the old.
We do. We are constantly exhausted because we think we have to invent a brand new solution for every problem.
But maybe your most important transformative work this week isn't to invent something new. Maybe it isn't to dig a new well in hard, untested ground. Maybe your work is simply to take a shovel, clear away the cynicism, and re-dig an old well.
You might just find fresh, life-giving water waiting for you right where your ancestors left it.
Think about that messy inheritance we talked about at the very beginning. The shredded contracts and the family dysfunction. Sometimes the water is already there. You just have to be willing to clear the dirt to find it.
Well said.
That's the heart of this section. This is wisdom for the present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.